They say AI hallucinates, that it invents facts out of thin air, and so it can't be trusted. But what's the alternative? Humans? Humans lie. Humans misremember. Humans cling to bad information long past its expiration date. And unlike AI, human error isn't always innocent. It is driven by bias, arrogance, and outright malice. A politician does not hallucinate when they rewrite history to serve their agenda. A journalist does not hallucinate when they frame a story in the most manipulative way possible. A witness on the stand, confident but wrong, is not having a hallucination. These are human failures, failures that shape policy, wreck lives, and distort reality. However, AI's mistakes do not come from deception. They do not serve an ideology. They are mechanical, random, and impersonal. And that makes AI, for all its flaws, more trustworthy than the deeply flawed human institutions that it is replacing. So let's be clear, AI makes errors, but human fallibility is worse. And if that sounds like a take you haven't heard before, then hit like, subscribe, and share this video because it's time to rethink this conversation. Critics act like AI's biggest flaw is that it sometimes makes things up, as if human knowledge is a flawless and well oiled machine. It isn't. Humans misremember, misinterpret, and misunderstand constantly and often with complete confidence. Think about memory, for example. People don't just forget details, they reconstruct them, filling in the gaps with fiction that they believe to be real. Studies have shown that eyewitness testimony, once considered the gold standard of evidence, is wildly unreliable. People swear they saw things that never happened, and courts have sentenced people to life in prison based on nothing more than a convincing but completely false recollection. And then there's the problem of expertise. Experts get things wrong all the time, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are human, stubborn, biased, and often unwilling to discard outdated ideas. In medicine, new discoveries take decades to gain acceptance because the old guard resists change. And in science, entire fields have been built on assumptions which were later proven false. The media is even worse. News outlets selectively report, they frame events in misleading ways, and outright manipulate public perception. Every headline is designed for maximum emotional impact and not truth. Every story is tailored for clicks, for engagement, and for an audience that expects their worldview to be validated. AI's mistakes, by comparison, are mechanical. They aren't shaped by greed, ideology, or self preservation. When an artificial intelligence hallucinates, it's because it was trained on incomplete or misleading data, not because it has an agenda. And unlike human institutions, AI can be corrected instantly. So when people act shocked that AI sometimes gets things wrong, ask them this: when was the last time humans got everything right? AI critics love the word hallucination because it makes AI's mistakes sound almost sinister, like it's an unhinged machine dreaming up fabrications. But hallucinations are not lies, they're mechanical errors, unintentional, random, and fixable. Human lies, on the other hand, are quite deliberate. Look at politics. Misinformation isn't a glitch in the system, it is a feature. Politicians rewrite history to justify their policies. They push false narratives, not because they believe them, but because they are convenient at the moment. And a leader claims an election was stolen, not because they have proof, but because it strengthens their hold on power. And the media operates in the exact same way. Journalists do not hallucinate when they misrepresent an event. They invent narratives. Stories are selectively framed to push an angle. They downplay information that contradicts their message and amplify whatever fuels outrage. And when caught, they don't apologize. They move on instead, hoping that you will forget. And then there's personal dishonesty. Humans lie constantly to protect themselves, to manipulate, and to control. A CEO denies wrongdoing to avoid scandal. A researcher buries inconvenient data to keep their funding. And even in casual conversation, people exaggerate, fabricate, and reshape events to suit their needs. But AI does not do any of this. It has no self interest, no motive, and no hidden agenda. Its errors come from statistical probabilities, not personal gain. It does make mistakes, but those mistakes do not serve a political party unless a human intervenes to make it so. Nor do they serve a corporate sponsor or an ego unless manipulated by similar interests. And that alone makes it more reliable than the human sources that AI replaces. So, if AI gets something wrong, the real question isn't why did it make a mistake? The real question is whose mistakes are worse? AI critics fixate on hallucinations, but they often ignore a much bigger issue. Human error often goes unnoticed, unchallenged, and uncorrected. AI makes mistakes, but human mistakes shape laws, destroy reputations, and rewrite history, and they have been doing so for millennia. Look at medicine. Doctors misdiagnose patients all the time. A missed tumor, a wrong prescription, or a misread test. These are all mistakes that cost lives, and yet we still trust them. Why do we do so? We do so because despite their flaws, they are the best tool that we have. Or at least they were before ChatGPT proved that it could beat them. And the same is true for AI. Then there is the case of the legal system. Eyewitness testimony has convicted innocent people for crimes that they did not commit. Studies show that memory is deeply unreliable, yet juries trust a confident witness more than cold data. And if AI fabricated an event in court, it would be called a hallucination. But when a human does it, it is called compelling testimony. Consider science as another example. Ideas that were once considered absolute truth, like phrenology, the idea that skull shape determines intelligence, were taken seriously for decades. And paradigm shifts take years, often because the people in power refuse to admit that they were wrong. AI, by contrast, does not cling to bad ideas. It updates based on new data. Meanwhile, people talk about AI hallucinations like they are uniquely dangerous, but human errors have been warping reality for centuries. The difference is that AI's mistakes are easy to spot and correct. Meanwhile, human mistakes become doctrine, get institutionalized, and take generations to undo. So we should consider the question, which is worse? A machine that sometimes generates bad information, or a species that builds entire systems on falsehoods and refuses to correct them? People demand perfection from AI while accepting human error as inevitable. They can point to AI's hallucinations as proof that it can't be trusted, yet they trust institutions built on generations of misinformation, bias, and outright deception. And the expectation that AI should be 100% accurate is an impossible standard that is never applied to anything, anywhere, ever. No human, no institution, and no expert have ever been able to meet it. The real measure of AI's value is not in whether it makes mistakes. It is in whether or not it outperforms the deeply flawed systems that it is replacing. And it does. AI can produce vast amounts of data without fatigue. It doesn't get emotional. It doesn't cling to bad ideas. It does not push a narrative for its own gain. When it makes a mistake, it can be corrected instantly, whereas a human expert might double down, dismiss criticism, or even refuse to update their views. AI, on the other hand, recalibrates. Then there is the dishonesty of AI's critics. Critics act like AI is meant to be an all knowing oracle, as if its only purpose is to deliver absolute truth. But that's not how it works. AI is a tool, like a hammer, one that augments human capability. And, like any tool, its effectiveness depends on how it is used. The flaws in AI are not a reason to reject it. They are a reason to improve it, to refine it, and to integrate it intelligently. The future isn't about whether or not AI is perfect. It is about whether or not it is better than the alternatives. And it is. AI's mistakes are obvious. Human mistakes are insidious. AI's hallucinations can be spotted and corrected. Human lies, biases, and errors become embedded in institutions, repeated for decades, and accepted as truth. People panic when AI generates a falsehood, but they don't blink when politicians fabricate history, when the media distorts events, or when experts cling to ideas that have been refuted a great many times. They demand flawlessness from AI, something that its proponents have never claimed it was capable of, while also making excuses for human failure. The reality is simple. AI does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be better than the deeply flawed human systems it is replacing. And it is. AI makes errors, but it doesn't lie, it doesn't deceive, and it doesn't have an agenda. And to whatever extent it does, it is because a human who does lie, who does deceive, and who does have an agenda programmed it to do so. That alone makes it more reliable than the people who claim to be the ultimate arbiters of truth. So AI hallucinations do not make it useless. Human fallibility makes it necessary. If this changed the way that you think about AI, then hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share the video. The conversation around AI is full of fear-mongering and bad takes. Let's push back with reality. With Elenarda, I'm Gene Botkin. End transmission.